we are going to demand that the reforms happen. And I'm going to take the mayor at his word when he says, I'm committed to this, I'm going to do this. He spoke at length, I think, in an article that I read yesterday about we're going to do what's in our self-interest, and this is in our self-interest. Now, the devil will be in the details. We need to understand, well, what does that self-interest mean? What is that? How does that manifest itself in specific programmatic changes that need to be implemented? But we can't go backwards. We need to move forward. And again, I'm a very practical lawyer. If we don't do that, the plaintiffs' bar is going to continue to sue the city. We're going to continue to hemorrhage money. We're going to continue to have to go into the bond markets at crazy interest rates and pay for settlements and judgment. That is madness. We need to stop that and go in a different way. Details, but on a number of different fronts, the Department of Justice report identifies things that are in the police contracts that are impediments. For example, I'll go back to early intervention system. There is a reference in the report that specifically talks about things in the collective bargaining agreements that will need to be changed to fully implement an early warning system. There are things regarding training, and for example, I don't know if this is specifically in the report, but it's something that we focused on during the task force. Because of the vagaries of the seniority process and picking shifts, we keep sending way too many very young officers out into the most dangerous neighborhoods on the midnight shift. That is ludicrous, and it sets them up for failure. That's got to change, but that's something that clearly has to be addressed through the collective bargaining process. And there are other things that we identified in the task force. One of the other things that's in the report is changing the language in the collective bargaining agreement so that victims don't have to file an affidavit accompanying a complaint about alleged misconduct on the part of police officers. There are other things that are there. So I think many of the recommendations in the report track the things that we talked about in the task force report and obviously go deeper and beyond what we covered in the task force report.
What page is that?
No, I mean, no report is going to capture everything. I think the Attorney General and Deputy Gupta indicated this is one of the largest teams that they have ever employed in doing a pattern and practice investigation. And of course, there's no wonder, because this is the largest police department that the department has ever investigated on a pattern and practice basis. But I have no indication whatsoever that their work was rushed. Obviously, what typically happens, which is a signed, negotiated consent decree, is not something that is in the immediate offing. But I think the findings, frankly, are, as I said, mirror many of the things that we spent an intense amount of time in the task force process, and then frankly handed off to the Department of Justice. We were very conscious when we were doing our task force work that the Department of Justice was there, and we wanted, frankly, a report and findings and underlying data that they could use and not have to reinvent the wheel following our process. So my personal view is, regardless of what happens in Washington, the desire, the impetus, the responsibility for change lays right here in Chicago. It starts, of course, with the mayor and the superintendent, but really all of us have a responsibility to play. I intend to do my part to be constructive, to push forward the things that I think are laid out in the Department of Justice report that are necessary for reform. So the politics and the resource and the priorities may change in Washington, but the work has to be done here. And I'm going to take the mayor at his word when he says, I'm committed to this, we're not going backward, we're going to go forward. Now, there were many, many avenues for outreach to the Department of Justice, and Mr. McCarthy clearly could have availed himself of those opportunities if he felt like his voice was important and needed to be heard. And frankly, I don't think it's helpful to talk about recriminations and what didn't happen. What's important is to move forward in a positive direction with solutions.